Back in the wholesaling Stone Age, high tech was represented by the car phone that mounted in your trunk, a Kodak carousel slide projector, and a newfangled portable computer that weighed just less than a cinder block. Today's wholesaler has an amazing array of technological innovations that enable them to access previously unavailable data, stay organized in unimaginable ways, and connect to clients and prospects with lightning speed. Here in the 2020s, wholesalers who fail to embrace all of the technological opportunities available to their practice are simply destined to spend their time chasing the sales leaders that understand its power. I'm your host, Rob Shore, and this series of shows from Wholesaler Masterminds Radio is called Wholesaler Tech Talk, sponsored by YCharts. Our goal is to explore the technology behind the art, science, and lifestyle of wholesaling. So strap on your propeller caps as we dive in. In over 3 decades of wholesaling, I've never seen wholesalers more excited about technology. By presenting data-driven strategies accompanied by dynamic visuals, technology is enabling wholesalers to better market their products and reduce friction in meetings. That's why I'm excited to introduce you to YCharts, a sales enablement platform that provides the data and tools you need to demonstrate your fund's value to advisors. Using YCharts in real time, you can objectively compare managers' and competitors' strategies, discuss how economic conditions impact your funds, and pull up visuals to compare key data points. YCharts will elevate your distribution team's collaboration with tools that allow internals to push charts, comp tables, screens, and reports to externals on the road that enable more productive meetings and provide shareable content for value-add follow-up. And here's a special for you. YCharts is offering a free month to my listeners. Mention Wholesaler Masterminds when you email them at hello@ycharts.com or head to ycharts.com. Wholesalers, 20 years ago, I was starting to make decisions from a senior leadership role about how the sales organization was going to be outfitted with technology. And some of those decisions were easy to come by, and other of those decisions were more difficult to come by. And there were all kinds of questions that were balled up into how would it be utilized and what sort of integration was necessary from the home office standpoint. And that's just my way of saying I needed to get an industry leader on the podcast. I needed to get a respected citizen of our community for a number of years who leads the charge of a very successful organization to speak with us about some of these issues around distribution, technology, how decisions are made, why they're made, and at what time. And I think it's a good window into this type of information that you otherwise wouldn't have exposure to. And that's why I'm super delighted to have Barry Mandinach with us today. He's the Executive Vice President and Head of Distribution at Virtus Investment Partners and a member of the senior management team. He leads distribution, positioning, messaging, and marketing of Virtus investment products across all distribution platforms. He also manages relationships with the firm's retail distribution partners, including wires, regionals, independents, and RIAs. Barry has more than 30 years of experience in the investment management industry, primarily in retail product sales, marketing, and sales leadership. Prior to joining Virtus in 2014, he was at UBS Global Asset Management US for 12 years, most recently as head of wholesale distribution and chief marketing officer. From 1999 to 2001, he was chief sales and marketing officer at Phoenix Investment Partners, the predecessor to Virtus. Barry Mandinach, welcome to Wholesaler Tech Talk at the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show.
Thanks, Rob. Happy to be here.
I am so glad that you are here because I have questions for a decision maker such as yourself. But the first question I have, frankly, was a question I had when I was introduced to you to be a guest on the podcast, which I so deeply appreciate you taking time to join us here on. And that was, Barry's been around a long time. You have a lot of experience. In no disrespectful way do I say you're an old dog. How does an old dog learn new tricks? That is to say, how has your technology usage evolved over the years that now here you are as a guest talking about technology and technology rollout and decision making within your organization? I'm really curious about that, please.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I appreciate being called an old dog. It all depends on how you think about it.
All with respect. All with respect, I promise.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, from my perspective, I've always used technology since it became a tool. I'm going back probably 20 plus years already. Obviously, it continues to evolve. But from where I sit, it's all about helping financial advisors create better outcomes for their clients. And anything that you can do to help illuminate a most important feature about investing, which is that the ride matters. It's not just what a fund or a particular offering does. It's the ride that was entailed to get there, where it's been exhilarating to own and where it's been difficult to own, where the style headwinds have occurred. Those types of things are really important to describing what a particular product can do for a client, what it can do for a portfolio, where it fits, how it compares to other managers or other asset classes. And there's no better way to portray that authentically and accurately and insightfully than vis-a-vis a good tech program. And that's why I see technology being so indispensable.
And that, of course, is from our client-facing point of view, our client being the financial advisor. But I trust that from a, firm infrastructure standpoint, from an organization and productivity standpoint, you are also seeing the evolution, if not the acceleration, of these platforms being crucial to your business.
Without question, whether it's communicating with our people in the field, our wholesalers, or whether it's communicating with financial advisors, increasingly there's harder and harder to get FaceTime, harder and harder to get phone time. It's not to say it's impossible, but it's more difficult. Many people want to get communicated with electronically and at their time of choice, and a lot of times that's not just 8 to 6 or whatever it could be a completely different time. So being able to implement technology in your communication is critically important.
How are you bringing the sales organization along? And by that I mean, we've got early, in any sales organization, we've got early adopters, we've got folks that see the light, and then, at the other end of the spectrum, we got the kicking and screaming folks. And I don't wish to be ageist because I fit in the category of folks that had carried the bag for a long time and worked in distribution now for a long time, et cetera. But you have folks in your organization, esteemed members of your team, that have been carrying the bag for well over 30 years. I know them. And how do you get the more seasoned, experienced wholesaler that's used to doing things in a certain way on board as new technology initiatives begin to roll through the organization?
Well, the first thing is you can't do everything at once, and you can't convert everybody at once, right? So you have to pick and choose, in my opinion, those who are most receptive to leveraging the technology, working with them to make sure that they adapt it effectively, and then establish a proof statement with those folks so that others who might be a little bit more on the slower to adapt side see that it's making a difference in overall productivity. So I kind of look at it as one wholesaler at a time, if you will, even though it's not technically one wholesaler at a time, but you start with a smaller group, get them up and running, use them as an example, and you move from there. My experience is, regardless of the age, a person who's been in the business for a few decades obviously has a competitive spirit and driven for success, and they're mostly willing to adapt to anything that is working that they think can responsibly accelerate the growth of their business.
Just to poke around on one of the things that you said there just a little bit, how do you go about, what process do you use as a leader? What process do you use to harvest the insights of the early adopters? Is it simply on a sales call, on a sales meeting call, on a Friday call? There is some information sharing. Is it better served live? Is it a combination of the two? Is there something else that you do without giving away trade secrets? I think it would be important to understand that.
Yeah, no, there are no trade secrets here. These are very straightforward techniques. Obviously, we have our Friday wholesaler calls, and featuring technology on the Friday calls is critically important, and it's an integral part of our calls. Not every call, but frequently used on our Friday calls. We're doing additional training for smaller groups in between those calls, so specific team meetings that might take place with a particular group of wholesalers on a different day than the Friday call. So we can do deeper dives. There can be more interaction, more facilitated questions, and so forth. And then we're working with folks from YCharts to work directly with individual wholesalers to get their personal comfort level up and their skill level up. And all of those things together are really what makes it happen. Now, I'm also, I'm in the early stages, but I'm going to lead with our folks on the sales desk to really earn their black belts, if you will, in this technology so that they can help work directly with their external partners to accelerate the adaptability of the usage of it as well.
That's awesome. I want to kind of go up to the leadership level where you are, the senior leadership level when you are. How do you begin to suss out some of these capital decisions, these capital investment decisions around technology, some of which are easier on the wallet and others are certainly more major capital investments? How do you begin to sort through the what's right for the organization and how can we afford it? How do those decisions begin to work themselves out?
Well, at the executive committee level, if you will, you have to kind of have a cultural belief system that mind share leads to market share, and that it's not enough anymore to have an excellent offering. There are a lot of excellent offerings out there. You really have to demonstrate with authenticity a desire to help an FA, a financial advisor, create a better client outcome, to create a more durable, more behaviorally aware, if you will, a more future-proof portfolio for their clients. And once you kind of agree at an executive level that that is imperative to maintaining access to the best financial advisors in the industry, then you have to pick and choose your spots as to where you want to invest in things that go beyond just the classic wholesaler to FA sales conversation and help the FA think about things differently and better. So once you have that, it's a cultural thing. You either, there are some people in the industry that are more cynical and probably prefer to devote almost all of their resources strictly to product-based sales material and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I have not found that to be the most effective path to building the most durable, sustainable growth business in the asset management business.
So you have this cultural thread that runs through the executive committee, the core understanding that in order for us to touch our client, our financial advisors, our centers of influence most efficiently and effectively, we need to incorporate properly selected technology elements into our business. So let's now say that decision has been made. How, as the leader, are you bringing your partner departments along for the ride? How are you integrating IT, marketing, operations where it is necessary to bring them along so that it is not just, Barry made the decision for sales and everybody comes along kicking and screaming. How do they come along for the ride as a willing partner?
Yeah, and it's an imperative issue. I would throw compliance in there as well.
Yes.
And it's just about good adult-like communication amongst the various departments within a firm, is that when you're considering a technology, you don't ram it through one channel and impose it on everybody else. You try to get group buy-in right from the start. So with us, as an example, the product team is an integral part of the overall business development issues that we deal with day to day. And so getting them initially to see the benefits to this, as an example, was imperative. Then getting the finance people here, our finance people, many of whom have CFAs, they are just really interested in building a great business together, and they are more likely to help us sponsor something that they understand and see the benefits to corporately. And so it's about getting group buy-in while you're evaluating this thing and not just showing it after a decision has been made. And that's what we did at Vertus. That's the way we try to do most things, is collaboratively and respectfully across the various units of the firm.
And that's critically important because I'm sure you know peers in the industry that don't necessarily operate in a firm that has that same belief system where, a leader in the sales organization makes a decision about a particular platform, and then folks need to snap to and march to that tune because the leader made that decision. I know it sounds rather authoritarian, but there's still leaders that operate in that fashion. I think you might agree.
Yeah, well, we're very fortunate. Coming from UBS, we're a relatively small firm, and we're located. Our headquarters are in Hartford, even though we have affiliates in different locations. And so the ability to communicate and get groups together and look people face to face is relatively easy.
Let's talk about how you are helping to frame the success or not of a particular rollout of a particular new tool that you have now purchased. A little bit of insight into how you do that. Is it simply the number of users? Is it time on the platform? Do you outsource that to your partners to help track for you? How are you staying after this? Because, it's one thing to write the check. It's another thing to know that your money has been spent prudently by tracking, whatever your metric is on usage.
Yeah, there's no one easy answer to that, right? So obviously we are tracking usage, and so we get to see who's accessing the program and how frequently they're accessing it. That's certainly informative, okay? But that alone isn't particularly helpful because somebody could be using it for their own interest and not really showcasing it properly with financial advisors, and it's not helping them be more commercially productive. That's not what we're looking to do. So what we try to do is, our sales managers, we have 3 great sales managers, and they go in the field and they observe and coach and ensure that the skill development is there on how to use this material, how to use this technology with an advisor, and to observe and then critique and coach and do that type of thing. When you observe excellent, best practices being employed, you highlight that on a Friday call or on one of your intra-week training calls. Same thing at the sales desk level, highlighting and finding best practices and making sure that people are using that and putting people on the spot in our we call these drill for skill, where you put people on the spot kind of Socratically and then ask them to perform a comparison of a particular offering to another competitive offering and how to do that properly. So there's a variety of ways to ensure that the usage is there, not only just the amount of usage, but most importantly, I think, the quality of the usage. And ultimately, it should come out in the numbers. And what I'm really trying to do is focus sequentially on a couple of illustrations that we think we have a lot of upside on the sales side if we can illustrate certain things well and effectively and authentically. And the proof will be in the pudding. And I think we're starting to see accelerated sales rates on some of the areas of our focus. And I like to think that our usage of this technology is part of the reason for that.
One of the things that I asked on my LinkedIn groups, I wanted to get some input from wholesalers, questions that they might ask senior leaders about IT usage. And one asked, how would you, now our senior leader guest, how would you recommend that they address the issue of IT being rather clueless about how a particular piece of technology is being utilized in the field? This wholesaler's frustration was, we spent the money, we rolled it out, and what I want to do on the platform, which is available on the platform, has not been rolled out. This piece of technology has not been rolled out, in this case, mobile. And he was quite frustrated that, we wrote this big check, we trained everybody, and yet when I go to do what I'm supposed to do or want to do, I can't do it on my mobile device, which was a finding to him. How would you address that?
Yeah, well, you have, part of it is to try to ensure that you're at a place that has the ability to use the technology properly. But you can't always do that, and you don't always have that luxury, but you certainly try to plan that in advance so you can. If you can't, you have some of these pre-programmed charts that you can have so that people don't really need internet access to gain access to these charts. It's not quite as interactive as it would be otherwise, but it's certainly a lot better than just conversing about it. Okay, and I've was talking to one of my folks this afternoon about doing something really old school, which is taking a chart and actually laminating it so that you could show it to somebody in the event that you couldn't gain access to the computer for whatever reason, or your iPad or what have you. So there's a variety of ways that you can overcome that, but that's the way we've been thinking about it.
I want to just poke at that a little bit, because I know you're answering it, and we are of course sponsored by YCharts. I know you're answering it with a YChart framework around it, with a YChart wrapper around it. But generally speaking, how would you address this wholesaler and their concern, or what should organizations be doing? And you alluded to it earlier, the partnership on the front end. But is there anything else to add around how do we make sure that the entire robust offering is available on a platform, and we make a decision to roll that platform out to our organization, YCharts or anyone else's?
Again, I think it's partnering with your IT group and making sure that they are all in on what your mission is and working together. And our marketing group works very extensively with our IT group to ensure that, to the best of our ability, we have the optionality to make the most of any of the technology that we're trying to employ on a local basis.
Okay. Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask some of the following questions and get you to peer out in your crystal ball. If you were to think about the evolution of our slow-to-adapt sector, where do you think financial services distribution, what sort of change do you think that we undergo technologically over the next 5 years?
Technologically, well, I've heard this expression. I haven't coined it, but somebody else did. I don't know who did, but people are drowning in information and starved for wisdom, right? And I think there's no shortage of information that people can gather online, vis-a-vis the asset management firms that they're dealing with, or vis-a-vis the financial advisory firms that they're dealing with. The problem is, how do you cut through all that to get to the really important stuff? And that's where I think, having human interaction is really, really important, and having ability of people to use technology as a way to kind of help illuminate the points that they want to make. But I don't see kind of in the next 5 years, do I see technology radically changing the landscape from where we are today? I actually don't, and I don't think that's old-fashioned in any way. I just am of the view that the biggest obstacle to better outcomes has always been and will continue to be behavioral, the tendency to chase yesterday's winners and destroy tomorrow's outcomes, having unrealistic expectations, not understanding the cyclicality of performance, following the myth that you can have consistently excellent performance. There's a whole host of things like that I think people who are adept at using technology can and really help communicate with people about that. But at the same time, because there's so much information being pushed at people, I think that having a human being to help navigate through that, whether it's via the telephone, via a personalized email, or a visit, whether it's to a client or to the FA themselves, those things aren't changing anytime soon. And as long as human nature doesn't change, which I don't think it changes, I think smart people who are trying to build durable, sustainable growth businesses with the mindset that you can't do that unless your clients are ultimately succeeding as investors, using this technology to illuminate the ride and how important it is to understand what a reasonable expectation is. All of these things are best served through technology, and I just see more and more people using that technology to do that, but I don't see a radical change in what the ultimate exchange is.
I want to ask you a bonus question, which isn't necessarily on the list that I sent you, but it's in that same realm, and it's a question that I asked in the sessions that we did called Lessons from Leaders, and they were senior leaders such as yourself. I sent you some of those links. And one of the questions I asked is, what is your outlook on wholesaling longer term? And aside from the technology piece, which you've very adeptly answered, of course, what is your outlook on wholesaling 5 years out? What would you say 5 or 10 years out? What would you say to the wholesaler? In my last Sunday night email, I wrote about the what if wholesaler. What if I get replaced by hybrid? What if I get replaced by phone desk only? What if I get replaced by, all of a sudden there's robo wholesaling? I don't know. What's your outlook on wholesaling as a craft that you've been involved in for 30 years?
I'm going to use a term from an AT&T commercial. They said, just okay is not okay. Mm-hmm. And I would say that applies to many things throughout a lot of industries right now, but probably no more so than in the asset management world. Just like a portfolio manager today who has been just okay. In other words, giving you market-like returns with market-like risk. Those managers are finding it harder and harder to survive and demonstrate why they deserve a place at the table. So too with wholesaling, which is I'm wildly bullish on the need for great wholesaling, and I'm wildly bearish on the just okay wholesaler who is not that curious, not that driven, not that mission-based in the way they think about how important their role is in trying to create better client outcomes for financial advisors. So it's like a lot of things in life. There's always going to be a great opportunity for a wholesaler who sees their profession as noble, sees it as serious, who gets motivated by trying to make a difference in the financial well-being of clients and the advisors that they work with. And, the markets are changing at all times. And I think, I've heard Morningstar say this, has never been a better time for advice. I feel that same way about wholesaling. The fact that you have elevated valuations in equities, historically low yields in fixed income, you have an aging baby boomer population that's, being asked to shoulder more risks, financial risks than anybody that's ever been around before, living longer, not having the defined benefit safety net that many people had. The need for great advice and the need for a great coach and leader from an asset management firm that can help people access the markets successfully, I think is great today and will be greater tomorrow. But if you're average, if you're just going through the motions, if you're content just kind of conveying information that is easily accessed off of Morningstar or what have you, if you're content being part of the problem, which is basically pimping past performance and not worried about future outcomes, those people I would be very concerned about. I think the business has been very kind to the average portfolio manager and the average wholesaler for the last 30 years. I don't think it will be as kind over the next slug of time.
Barry, those are awesome insights. And wholesalers, I just want to repeat back one thing that I heard, and you can probably expect it to show up in a Sunday night email. This whole notion about just okay wholesaling, and just okay wholesaling is not okay. And that if you really want to ensure your future, it is moving from just okay to great and staying there. Barry Mandinach is with Virtus Investment Partners, and I thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure, Rob. I appreciate the time, and I wish everybody good health and good fortune going forward.
Wholesalers, come back next time for another episode of the new Wholesaler Masterminds radio show and these episodes of Wholesaler Tech Talk. Does this sound at all familiar? You've had a successful meeting with an advisor. You've made a note to reschedule her for another meeting next time you're in town. You place a call, you send an email or two, and you don't get a reply. And even though you intend to follow up to secure the appointment, the advisor drops off your radar. That, right there, is where Wholesaler Mastermind schedulers come in. We excel at what we call pleasant persistence, staying after your list of appointments to be scheduled with dogged determination, remaining consummately professional and, well, pleasant. We've scheduled over 46,000 appointments. How many can we schedule for you? Check out Wholesaler Mastermind Schedulers at WMMschedulers.com. That's WMMschedulers.com. You'll find all of our content at wholesalermasterminds.com, and the podcast can be found at iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play.